Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on a Friday evening. I know that's not always the easiest thing to do. I know my work week extends to the end of Sabbath, but for most people, you're done on Friday, so when you come out with something special, it's saying something, so I appreciate that. I'd like to welcome you to our seminar, start our seminar with Dr. Bryan Cafferky, and the seminar is entitled Untangling Our Relationships. Now, what do you prefer to be called?
Bryan.
Bryan. Okay. And he spells Bryan the correct way as well, with a Y, which is just fantastic.
One letter better than him.
Are you think you're on? Okay, good. All right. Well, so Bryan came to our pastor's meeting about a year ago via Zoom, which I can't imagine what it's like to present to that many people only on Zoom. But he presented some things about relationships that he'll get into, I think, tomorrow about the triangles, so just a tiny little teaser, that I was like, that makes so much sense. And when he had presented it, I was like, I wonder if there would be a way to bring him to our church. But I left the idea there. And I think, did you send out emails to like a lot of different churches? Certain churches. All right, so I get one of these emails from him saying, hey, I'd be happy to come and do a seminar. And I was like, boom, we need to do that. So I invited him, and we'd have a little bit of an email exchange as well after the presentation to the pastors' meetings. So I'm very excited to hear what Bryan has to say to us this evening. I think you will be blessed. Because I only heard 1 hour worth of presentation, and we get close to 4 with him this weekend, so I'm very excited to hear. But if you don't mind, I'd like to have a word of prayer, and we'll get going. Gracious Lord, we do thank you for the Sabbath that you've given to us. We thank you for the safety and travel of bringing everyone here. I thank you that you brought Bryan all the way from Southern California. Pray a special blessing on his family as they are existing without him there with them. But Lord, we are so thankful that he's here with us. Lord, we ask that the things that he shares would touch those deep points in our lives where so much hurt and pain can reside, and that the things he shares can help us just to experience more joy and peace and beauty and blessing in the relationships that you have designed for us to enjoy. So Lord, we pray that your Holy Spirit would be here, that you would anoint Bryan's lips, and that you would anoint our hearts to receive what he has to say in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bryan. All right. I'm excited to be here. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. We're going to be talking about family, specifically Abraham's family in the book of Genesis. And we're going to try and connect our understanding of what families are like, what kind of family rules there exist, what kind of family expectations, and connect it way back thousands of years, 4,000 years ago, try and connect with them. Here we go. So we'll be meeting tonight for about 2 hours. Then Saturday morning at 9:30, is it right in here? And then our Sabbath service at 11, and it's actually 2 o'clock, not 2:30. So right after potluck, we'll be back in here again. So this is Mesopotamian artwork. So this is the Mesopotamian depiction of the tree of life. Abraham would have seen this and recognized this as the tree of life. This is the way that they showed it in artwork. And so I'm borrowing some of that motif right here. If you can see these petals, similar to the, oh boy, here we go. There we go. See these little petals right here? So we're trying to connect our family to Abraham's family, and we're going to be using something called a genogram. A genogram is like a family tree, but we are interested in how different people are interacting with one another. So the first part of this presentation, I will teach you how to read a genogram. But first, you should probably know a little bit about me because you've never seen me before. So my name is Bryan Cafferky, and I'm 42 years old. I'm fairly physically able. I can carry things up and down stairs. I'm a white Caucasian male, 4th-generation Irish-American, heterosexual, cisgender male. I have a family, my wife Jenny. We've been together for over a decade, and I have 2 children, both via IVF. We've experienced some infertility, and both those 2 children are rainbow babies. And we'll be talking about infertility a little bit this evening because that was one of the experiences in Abraham's family. We're married. I teach and do research down at Loma Linda University. I've never worked for the military, but I have done military research. I'm a associate faculty member down there at Loma Linda. I was born here in the United States. I identify as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. Non-union worker, not because I'm against that, I'm actually pro-union, but at Loma we don't have unions. Thinking style, I'm an abstract sequential thinker, if you're interested in that. Geographic location, I live down in the southwest of the United States. Parental status, I'm a parent of 2 daughters. Education, I have a PhD in marriage and family therapy. I'm a non-smoker. Work background, I've done improvisational theater for 10 years. I was a pastor here in Washington Conference at Green Light Church for a few years. Communication style, this really comes from, if you know anything about the Myers-Briggs.
I'm an ENFP. If you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 7. So it kind of influences my sometimes silly, not always straight cut, pure professional, because I like to have a little bit of fun. And economic status, middle class. But what I'm really interested in doing tonight is to have you suspend everything you know about the book of Genesis, just for a little bit. Most of the time when we read the book of Genesis, it's to learn about the character of God, right? The character of the divine. Yahweh, Elohim, the creator, the powerful God who pursues humanity, creates humanity, chases after them to try and keep them in relationship with him. There's a lot of theology and Christology and systematic theology that we gain from the book of Genesis. And I want you to just suspend that just for a moment, and we're going to look at the family of Abraham. Why? Because even though the book is about the character of God in contrast with the character of humanity, the narrator of the book included a lot of indelicate family drama. And we're going to look at that family drama through the one-way mirror of time.
We're going to be observing the family, and at the very end we'll make some observations about that family and maybe translate that into our own lives, questions about certain patterns that we might experience in our own families as well. These are my 2 children. Here's Penelope, she is 5, and Phoenix, she is 1.5 years old. My wife she's in the middle of getting them bathed and ready for bed by herself, so bless her. So I'll be thinking about that. Here we go. So here we are doing some cooking. Notice who's in charge here, the older one, boxing out the younger one. But I miss them. I like spending time with them, but I'm also glad that I'm here. Family dysfunction rolls down from generation to generation, like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one person in one generation has the courage to turn and face the flames. That person brings peace to their ancestors and spares the children that follow. Everything that we do in our lives is usually patterned. It's part of a pattern. And every behavior is a symptom of the system. Everything we do is a symptom of the system, and we'll unpack that as we go through tonight. And if we can see every behavior as part of the context of the family system, which is influenced by the family rules, we can understand the behavior so much better. So we'll be focusing on Abraham's family. We'll be using a family tree. Raise your hand if you've seen a family tree before. Awesome, great. So it's a lot like a family tree, but we're not just interested in biological relationships. Instead, we are interested in how different people relate to each other. So the emotional, relational interactions, not just the biological links. Some of us might be able to trace our lineage way far back. Some of us may not. Some of us may not even really have a good understanding of biological relationships. And again, we're not going to be interested in that, but I want you to think about this idea that water flows downhill, right? Patterns also flow downhill. And a lot of the patterns of how we operate in our lives, we probably learned a lot of that in our family of origin, the family we came from. And they probably learned that from the previous families. So a lot of the things that we do in our everyday life, we've learned and it's been passed down from generation to generation. So here's the beginning of a genogram. We're going to walk through this, and then we're going to add these relational lines where it gets really exciting. So on the top left, we see this square. You see the square? This is Thornton. Whenever there's a square, that's someone who identifies as male. There's an X through it, so that means Thornton has passed away. Thornton, see this line down here, is linked with Becca, so they are in a married romantic relationship. On board so far? Yeah, okay. And they have 3 children. The squares are male, the circles are female. So Tyson was the eldest. We go in chronological order from left to right. Tyson's the eldest, James is the middle child, and then Christy is the youngest daughter. Raise your hand if you're with me so far. Okay, great. Over here, we have we don't know the father's name, the biological father's name. We have Gladys, who's passed away. This double hash mark right here means that they were married, but they got divorced. And they had one daughter, Roxy. Over here, we have Ricky, who's passed away, who's partnered with Catalina, and they've had twins, this little triangle piece. Roberto is still alive. Martin has passed away. Raise your hand if you're with me so far. Okay. Raise your hand if you're feeling pretty confident about this. Okay. We'll spend a little more time, then we'll go to the next slide. Here we have James and Roxy, and they've had 2 children. Jeff is the eldest son. Trisha is the youngest daughter. So this triangle in the middle means Trisha identifies as lesbian, and she has a partner over here, Hannah, and they have a daughter, Julie. This whole genogram is created by Dahlia. This is from Dahlia's perspective. A genogram is a subjective tool to showcase patterns that we see in the family. It's a snapshot of what's happening in the family. So Dahlia is the eldest daughter of Jeff and Sophia, and Dahlia's younger brother, Philip, over here. On this side of the family, we have Sophia, who's the eldest daughter. We have Emily, so when you have a square with a circle around it, it means that this person is transgender. So this is Emily. Here's Damien and Lily, and Damien and Lily have had a divorce, and their daughter, Bernice. Any questions about this, what we see up there right now? I see no hands, so I'm going to interpret that as a secret sign between you and me that I should go to the next slide. Is that good? Okay. Here we go. Same family. Woo! I heard that. Okay. Over here on the bottom left is the key. It's the legend. You can refer to this if you want to understand what's happening. So if we have 2 green lines, that means a close, safe relationship. If it's 3 red lines, that's fused, as in they're a little too close. They're in each other's business. They're sharing each other's toothbrush. They're sharing too much information. They need a little bit more space. So this is close, fused in an unhealthy way. We have this jagged red line. This means there's conflict. The blue line with the arrow means there's abuse. This dotted gray line means there's an emotional distance. And the red line with these 2 hash marks means emotional cutoff. Emotional cutoff means I don't want to interact with you at all. If you come to Thanksgiving, I'm not going to look at you. I'm going to pretend like you're dead to me. Maybe you experienced some of that. Oh, there's a hand. Was there a hand?
No, I didn't see a hand, but I just wanted to say it's perfectly okay to raise your hand and actually ask a question tonight. Don't feel like you can't do that. So if something pops into your mind and you want to know, shoot the hand up. We'll get the microphone to you because your question might be the same question someone else has.
Thank you, Ryan. So let's walk through this. So Becca is very, very close with Christy in an unhealthy way. We see that? The 3 red lines. But Becca has an emotional cutoff with her partner, Thornton, who's now passed away, with her eldest son, Tyson, and with James, who has now passed away. So she is distant. She's cut off from her partner, her 2 sons, but she's really, really close with her daughter, Christy. So we can imagine what it's like in that household. Mom and daughter, really close. The sons, not close with mom, and the father, not close with mom. Over here we have Gladys. We do not know who the biological father is, but Gladys abused Roxy, her only daughter. Roxy is also the source of a lot of tension in the larger family. Am I right? We can see this blue line. So Roxy abused Christy in some way, as well as abusing Chris and perpetrated abuse towards Trisha. Then there's a lot of conflict with Hannah, Trisha's partner, and with other sides of the family. So Roxy, who is the biological mother of Jess, so here's here's James and Roxy. Roxy is Jess' father. There's tension between Roxy and Sophia. Are we seeing that so far? Tracking some of this? Okay. So a lot of tension here. On this side of the family, there's a lot of closeness. So Ricky and Catalina are close. Roberto and Martin are close. Roberto and Emily are close. Then we see this here. Roberto is really close with Jeff. I wonder why this is the case. I don't know, but I can make some educational guesses. Look how James and Jeff, there's some emotional distance between them. Maybe Jeff grew up in a family, he was not close with his biological father, but then when he partnered with Sophia, he found a father-in-law that he felt close with. We're seeing that? Maybe we could find a different parent, maybe not biological parent, but a different parent to help parent me so I have that same sort of connection. And maybe Jeff was like, I want to make sure that when I have children, if I can have children, if I have a son, I'm going to make sure I'm very close to that son. because I did not experience that closeness with my father. So he's really close with his son Philip. Over here on this side, Sophia is the eldest daughter, then Emily, then Damien. Notice how Roberto is really close with Emily, and Karina is really close to Damien, but nobody's really close with Sophia in her family of origin. So she felt some of that distance. Maybe when she grew up, she thought, if I have kids, especially a daughter, I'm going to make sure that I love that daughter, that she knows that I'm a safe person. That little daughter is going to be my baby. So she's really close with Dahlia, which works because Jeff is really close to Philip, but there's some tension here between them. So some sibling tension. Maybe that's somehow related to the emotional distance between their mom and dad. Because if you have a favorite parent and the parent loves you, and you know who's the favorite child of that parent, siblings sense that. Am I right? All right. Ask me a question. Ask me 2 or 3 questions about this before I move on. Thank you.
Are you going to get into what happens if the snapshot changes with time, or is this presumed to kind of be a static situation?
Good question. So this is from Dahlia's point of view. This is how she sees the family at this point in time. If Philip made this, it might be a little bit different, right? If Jeff made it, he might make it slightly different. So it's from one person's perspective, a snapshot in time, and definitely things can change over time. Good question. And there's one in the back after this. Yes, good.
You mentioned a couple of those where there's tension or conflict with the person that has died. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Just because someone has passed away in the family doesn't mean the tension in the family that the family experienced with that individual doesn't mean that tension disappears. The tension actually stays in the family, it's just redistributed. Some of this might be reflective of what happened when they were younger. Maybe Roxy perpetrated abuse towards her youngest daughter, Trisha, and her eldest daughter, Jeff. Maybe that happened in childhood. It may not be happening now, but this is what characterized their relationship. Even though it hasn't, maybe the abuse happened 15, 20, 30 years ago, it's still very much a painting of what happened in that family. Good. So you can still have animosity towards someone who's passed away. Maybe this, obviously Gladys is no longer perpetrating abuse towards Roxy because she's passed away, but this is what characterized their relationship. Good question. Yes?
I don't see any lines going to or from Jade.
To or from Jade. Help me find Jade. Where's Jade?
In the middle.
Julie? From Julie? Good question. So some people, if there's no relational lines, it doesn't mean they don't interact. It just means this is just a normal relationship. We just kind of get along. Okay. We're not super close. We're not fighting. We're just there, which is okay. You could potentially draw lines from Dahlia to her father Jeff, to Julie, to Trisha, to Hannah, to every single person, because we do interact with everyone in our family, but maybe there's nothing of note here. So we're just kind of noticing the things that are front and center in the family. Yes?
I want to know who Julie is biologically related to.
Good question. We don't know if it's Hannah's egg or Trisha's egg, right? Or maybe this is a surrogate from someone else. We have no idea. That part is not included in this genogram. But there is a way to show that, but whoever created this slide decided not to include that piece of information. Good. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. I'm going to interpret this as, get along, little doggy. Here we go. We already did some of that. It will take every triggered nerve, every tremble in your voice, every butterfly in your belly, and every rejoicing ancestor for you to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. If we can identify the patterns in our own family, there's the opportunity to change those patterns. If we don't know those patterns exist, we're going to continue on business as usual. So the genogram is a tool to highlight what the patterns actually are. Tonight we'll be talking about stress and anxiety. There are some differences between stress and anxiety, but there are some obvious similarities. When we talk about stress, we usually know what the source of the stress is. I'm stressed because I have to do my taxes. And then once I'm done with my taxes, whew, I'm glad that's done. Now I can breathe. So with stress, we usually know what it is that's causing the anxiety. With anxiety, we don't always know what it is. It's hard to put our finger on it. Like, I don't know why I'm feeling anxious. I just sense some tension inside of me, but I don't know what it is. So we experience stress and anxiety in a very similar manner, but with stress, we know what it is, what's causing it. With anxiety, it's a question mark. But because we experience it in a similar manner, I'll be using those two words interchangeably tonight. On board with this? Okay. Because we often manage stress and anxiety in a similar manner. We usually use the same sort of coping skills that we learned in our family of origin, because this is how we learned when we experience tension or stress. We watched our parents do it, maybe some siblings, how they handle it. So this is just how we do business. I'm guessing everybody has their preferred way of making macaroni and cheese, or scrambled eggs, or toast. Some people like it barely warm. Some people like charcoal. And usually that's based on what you experienced in your family of origin. So we usually repeat what we learned. So here's the focus of this evening. I want to know, what are some of Abraham's family rules? What are the rules in this family? What are some of the intergenerational patterns in this family? How do people handle anxiety or tension? How do they resolve conflict within this family? Who are the villains? Because there are some bad guys, right? And who are the heroes? Now, in the previous slide, we'll run back to Roxy. Oh boy, come on. Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Roxy. Yep. Yeah, Roxy's slide. I want to make sure we can see, get a good view of who Roxy is. There we go. So, could you see how Roxy could be a problem in the family? Yeah. Why could she be a problem? Because what? She's got tension with a lot of people. She perpetrated abuse against other people. She experienced abuse, so it's really easy to see this person as a problem in the family. Every behavior is a symptom of the system, okay? And once we can step back and see the context, maybe Roxy didn't grow up in a very safe household. See that? Didn't know who her biological father was. Gladys perpetrated abuse. So maybe Roxy grew up not knowing what safety is. And if you don't know what safety is, it's hard to reproduce safety in other relationships. If it's really cold outside, I understand a few weeks ago there was some snow and some freezing rain. Is that correct? Yeah, so it's cold out here. Now, if you're cold outside, and there's a hot tub, a jacuzzi, and you try to put your foot into that hot water, the contrast between your body temperature and the air temperature versus the water temperature, you're going to feel that sting, right? Sometimes this is what it's like for people. They grow up in a family where safety is not the norm. So when you experience vulnerability and safety, it stings a little bit because you're not used to it. Maybe Roxy was never given the opportunity to experience a safe, vulnerable, fulfilling relationship. So all she knew was what she learned from her mother. And Gladys probably didn't create this. She might have learned this from her parents, right? Every behavior is a symptom of the system. So if we see this person as the bad person, it's really easy to point them out. You better change your behavior. You're a mess. But if you see her as the symptom bearer of the family, and we see every behavior is a symptom of the system, then we start to see the greater context. A lot of people might just be funneling their anxiety towards Roxy and blaming Roxy for everything else that happens in the family. But that's not fair because she didn't have the chance. She did not choose her family of origin, right? Okay, great. Let's jump forward. Here we go. Okay. Anyone know off the top of your head, what chapter does the Abraham story begin without looking at the Bible or your phones? Anybody have a guess? 12? Raise your hand if you think it's 12. Okay, raise your hand if you think it's 13. Raise your hand if you didn't know if there was going to be a quiz about this today. Okay. Typically, the Abrahamic narrative does start in chapter 12. That's the call of Abraham. But in the original Hebrew text, there were no chapter breaks. Those were added later. The beginning of the story actually begins in chapter 11. We're going to go there right now because the narrator started out the story in a very specific manner. And how you start the story, I'm going to get some tingles. How you start the story means we should pay attention to this. Second question is, I want you to be thinking about this. Who was Abram and Sarai's first son? Just think about this. I'll be asking you later on. Who was Abram and Sarai's first son? So here we go. Abram and Sarai. Later on, their names change, right? To Abraham and Sarah. So the story starts in Genesis 11. And here's what we know. This is how it starts. Sarai was barren and she had no child. That's how this starts. The story starts out with a family that experiences barrenness, that experiences infertility. That's the baseline. This is how we're starting. Don't miss this. If we start in chapter 12, we miss this, right? But the narrator wanted us to know, okay, infertility in this family. Before we knew that Sarah was beautiful, we found out she could have no children. Before we learned that she was Abraham's half-sister, we learned that she's not able to maintain a pregnancy. This is a big deal. Here in the United States, there are different holidays, days for remembrance, understanding when families have difficulty with infertility. And the holidays, even though there are no specific infertility or baby loss days around the holidays, these are some of the hardest days of the year. I've experienced infertility with my family. Incredibly difficult. In fact, infertility is a disease or condition of the reproductive system, often diagnosed after a couple has had 1 year of unprotected, well-timed intercourse, or if the woman has suffered multiple miscarriages and the woman is under 35 years old, or if the woman is over 35 years old and is diagnosed after 6 months of unprotected, well-timed intercourse. Abraham and Sarah, 75, 65. A little older than 35 years old, right? A little bit older than that. 1 in 8 couples have trouble getting pregnant or sustaining pregnancy. 1 in 4 women will experience a miscarriage in their lifetime. The book of Genesis never has the word miscarriage. It happens in other books of the Bible, but never in Genesis. But I would not be surprised if this was part of that family experience, because they were experiencing infertility and barrenness for years, right? So the baseline is this couple experiences infertility. And then here's the call of God to Abraham. And listen, go forth from your country, okay, from your land, and from your relatives, your family, and from your father's house, your family, to the land, land again, and I will show you, and I will make you a great nation of people, family, and I will bless you. I will make your name of your family great, and so you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and all the families of the earth will be blessed. So what are the 2 big things that God is saying in this call? Family and land, those 2 things. He's saying, I will give you a family, and I will give you land. This is the call of God to Abraham. This is the carrot God put on the end of the stick for this family because he knew this family wanted this. Let's talk about this a little bit more. This should not be a big surprise. Earlier in Genesis chapter 3, this is after Adam and Eve ate of the fruit, God comes to them in the garden, and he talks, we're going to reverse order, he talks with Adam, and he says, cursed is the ground, let's hear that, because of you, in pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles of the land it shall bring forth to you, and you shall eat of the plants of the field, again of the land. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, to return to the ground, to the land. For out of it you were taken, for you are dust of the land, and to the dust of the land you shall return. Okay, God is talking about in pain you shall eat of it. Yes, tilling the ground, weeding, plucking things up, that's all sweat. Your back might hurt, your hands might hurt, but I don't think that's the pain that God is talking about. What is the real pain of the land when you're not able to produce the food? What's the result? Hunger. When you're working the soil and the soil is not producing how you want it to. So famine. When Mother Earth is not producing the food that you want, there's the real pain. To the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth, and in pain you will bring forth children. Yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So I have never given birth personally, and I'm not going to mansplain what it's like, but talking with my wife, yes, the birth experience can be very traumatic and painful and difficult. But the pain of having difficulty having children when you want children, That's a different sort of pain. So when mother is not able to produce children, produce fruit, and when Mother Earth is not able to produce fruit, those are the two big pains that God's talking about. Are we on board with this? So it's been a few chapters, and now we have this family. I'm going to introduce you to Sarai, and she was barren. Boom, back to this. This is what we should be thinking about. The pain of not being able to have children when you want children. So how will Abraham's family respond to these two things? Every single generation in Abrahamic narrative, every single generation in Abraham's family wrestles and struggles with these two things. What do we do when there's a famine, when we want food, but the land doesn't produce it? What do we do when we want kids, but we're not able to have kids? Those are the two big questions that every single generation faces in this Genesis story. Okay, so here's a genogram. This should be a little bit familiar. So Abram marries his half-sister Sarai, and then he has two other brothers, Nahor and Haran. Milcah, his daughter, marries Nahor, and there's another son, Lot. So now I kind of connected them right here, so we can see that Abram is connected with Sarai, Nahor is connected with Milcah, even though Milcah is the daughter of Haran, and then here's Lot over here. Are we on board with this so far? Able to track this a little bit? Okay, so this is looking probably a little bit similar to what we looked at maybe 10 minutes ago. So there's a story about these individuals right here, which we're going to get into. So down here in the land of Ur, which is where Abram and Sarai used to live, and they moved up here to Paddan Aram. We're going to visit Paddan Aram a few more times in the story. So they move up here. Raise your hand if you enjoy checking your emails. Raise them high. Okay, you got a few email checkers. Good. Raise your hand if you like text messages. Okay. Raise your hand if you like reading books. Oh, okay, that's what I need to do. Okay. So you can thank the Sumerians for this because they created the first written language. So this is a very cosmopolitan city. The Tigris and Euphrates is right here. And this area, because of irrigation and plentiful water, they were able to grow wheat and barley 2 or 3 times as plentiful as the surrounding region, which means they had a lot of goods to export. This was a very wealthy area. In fact, down here in Ur, there was running water, both into the city and into some of the buildings. So imagine, you're living at a place, very cosmopolitan, with running water, and then you move up here to Paddan Aram, and then God calls you way out here to the wild, wild west. Very different experience than the creature comforts over in this direction. That phrase, I don't want to recreate the wheel, because they first created the wheel. So there were technological advances as well. So a lot of things to help life over here, and then more of the nomad existence once you move down this direction. So a very different lifestyle for this family. Okay, so their story was their infertility story. So I've given you a little bit to think about it. Who is Abram's and Sarai's first son? Oh, some mumbling. Isaac. Okay, who says Isaac? Okay, why do we say Isaac? Because that was of their flesh. Okay, do other sons not count as much? Ooh, I like that. Okay, so if we're looking chronologically, who was their first son? Ishmael. Okay, raise your hand if you think it's Ishmael. Okay, what if I told you they had another son, other than Isaac and Ishmael? Let's look. The narrator makes it very clear who's a part of their family. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Lot's father has died. Back then, they did not have the foster care system. They did not have orphanages. The family took care of them. Now, Abram was 75 years old, and when he departed from Haran, Abram took Sarai, his wife, and again, the narrator wants us to see, and Lot, his nephew, and all their possessions. So the narrator is saying, oh, Lot is now a part of this family. Let's keep going. Later on, Abraham lies to Pharaoh about Sarah is my sister. Oh, okay, now actually, okay, she's my wife. And then he ends up leaving Egypt because God comes to Pharaoh and says that, be careful of this person. She's actually not the sister. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, as well as these servants, male and female servants, which Hagar came with that group, and Lot with him. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. So the narrator is saying, Lot is a part of this family. Are we seeing that so far? So the first son was actually Lot by adoption. So Lot is adopted over here. I think there was a question earlier about the genogram. We want to know who was it, where did Julie come from? Who was she biologically related to? This is how you would draw that with a dotted line here. This is the adoptive family, but biologically related to these individuals over here. Genesis 13, 14, 18, Abram really cares for Lot. There's a lot of focus on Lot. Abram lets Lot choose first where he wants to settle. They come to the hills. Look, our shepherds are fighting. Where do you want to go, Lot? He lets Lot choose. And where does Lot choose? Sodom and Gomorrah, the ripe fields. And Abraham is okay with that. I want the best for my son. I'm going to let her take that. Abram rescues Lot. Later on in 14, we have the 4 kings from the east who come and say, you need to pay us tribute, otherwise we're going to take your whole city captive. Nobody wants to pay tribute, so they take Sodom and Gomorrah captive, everybody, and they start heading out. So Abram and his buddies chased after them, even though he is vastly outnumbered, and he rescues Lot. Down here, Abraham bargains with God, who has the audacity to bargain with the divine, so that he can save his first son's life. Seeing that? Genesis 15. Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me since I am childless? And the heir to my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram says, since you have given me no offspring to me, one born in my house is my heir. So Abraham is still experiencing this infertility, even though he has an adopted son. You can have the pain and grief over not having biological children at the same time that you are adopting someone. When you're adopting a child, this is difficult because this new family, this adoptive family, is built on the grave of the previous family. So this is a very difficult experience for some families to navigate. We know that Genesis 16, Sarai has this sweet idea. Hey, how about you take this new maidservant that we got down in Egypt when you lied to Pharaoh about me being your sister? How about we take her to help us have a child? So they're still trying to solve this problem of infertility, right? You bored with this? So we have this new possibility here. So the question is, how do we typically view Sarai in this story? What kind of role does she play? Little louder. A fixer? Okay, she's a fixer. Trying to come up with a solution. Do we typically see Sarai as someone who is unfaithful or impatient? Oh, impatient. There we go. Impatient. Yeah. And typically, the spin on the story is it that, if Sarah would have just waited a little bit longer, then God would have blessed them in a different way? No? Yes? No? Both of them? So God may have blessed through the surrogate Hagar as well as later on with Isaac? How do we feel about this? It's messy. Oh, bless you. We can probably shut it down right now. This family is messy. And the narrator in the Old Testament is often framing the stories against polygamy. So when there's multiple partners in a relationship, this is also often seen as a bad thing. We know who's Ishmael. Who is Ishmael's biological mother? Oh, good point for you. Okay. And who is Isaac's biological mother? Okay. Who is Reuben's biological mother? Yeah. Who is Issachar's biological mother? I got quiet. Why aren't we making a big deal about who the biological mother is for the 12 sons of Israel? Why aren't we doing that? We make a big deal out of it here, right? Oh, Ishmael came from Hagar. Oh, and Isaac came from Sarai. Anyone know, do you feel you could confidently stand up and tell us the 12 tribes of Israel and who their biological mother was? What if I had a $20 bill in my pocket? Could anyone do it now? Why don't we make a big deal out of the fact of which was the biological mother? Because we have Leah and Rachel, Bilhah and Zilpah, right? why don't we make a big deal about who the biological mother is for the following generation? It's already a mess, because it's already a mess. Good. Yes, it's already a mess. Well, on one hand, it's easier when there's just two sons that are in the birth story here, right? Ishmael and Isaac, easier to keep track of. But we make a big deal about the big difference between these two, but later on, it's not that big of a deal. In fact, I would suggest that Sarai's suggestion to Abram about having Hagar wasn't like the first time this was ever thought about, right? It wasn't like, hey, Sarai created this idea, hey, let's have someone else help us with our infertility challenge. In fact, Rebekah came with a servant, and Leah and Rachel both came with servants. This was the standard practice, perhaps. And it just that Sarai didn't have a maidservant with her until she came back from Egypt. So maybe this is the standard practice. This is like surrogacy, right? It's like the IVF of the day, trying to figure out how can we have children. We have difficulty with this infertility. So if you wanted to know, here Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah are the biological sons of Leah. Dan and Naphtali, biological sons of Bilhah. Gad and Asher, biological sons of Zilpah. Then we have two more with Leah, and then Joseph and Benjamin with Rachel. So if you want, next time, if you follow me around, next time I do this seminar, you can get a cool 20, if you remember all this. So we have Hagar, who's heading home. She runs away because Sarai is mistreating her, right? So things change. All of a sudden, like, Hagar gets pregnant. All of a sudden, Sarai's not so sure about this because of the way that Hagar is looking down on Sarai. So Hagar runs away. God tells her to go back. Hagar gives birth, but Sarai is not mentioned in the story. It is very clear that this biological son between Hagar and Abraham is not going to be Sarah's, the way the narrator paints this story. So, yes, this is a biological son, but not of Sarai. She wants to make sure that this is not the case. In fact, Sarai means princess, so I can imagine this princess, not interested in this one. I thought I wanted this, changed my mind. I want my own biological son. And Lot is not the same, but now there's two sons in the family. You see that? But he's living somewhere else now. He's living over in the wicked land. Okay, then there's finally name changes. Name changes, circumcision, and more infertility in this chapter. So far, from chapter 11 to chapter 17, there's been a lot of infertility stuff. I don't want to miss that, because the narrator is trying to make sure we are following that thread all the way through the story. Sometimes we miss that when we're looking for theological or reflections, which I promise we'll do at the end, but let's just stay focused on the family for a little bit longer. There's tension between these two. We know that Abraham bargains with God. What about 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, maybe just 10 people in Sodom and Gomorrah? Then will you save Lot? So Abraham is really interested in preserving and keeping Lot alive. We know that Abraham is not a morning person. The narrator makes this clear. There are 3 times in the story where Abraham gets up early. We'll go in reverse order. Here's the first one. Gets both together. Genesis 22:3. This is the binding of Isaac. So this is when he's going to take Isaac up to the mountaintop. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son, and he split the wood for the burnt offering, and he arose and went to the place which God had told him. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different verbs here. So this old man is doing this himself. The narrator is slowing down the story to see Abraham, seasoned individual, doing all of these things. This might be the last time he is in camp with his son, Isaac. So this is the 3rd time he did it. The 2nd time he did it, Genesis 21. Ishmael was about to be sent off into the desert. So Abraham rose early in the morning. There it is again, that phrase. And he took the bread and the skin of water and gave them to Hagar, putting them on her shoulder, and gave her the boy and sent her away. Again, 6 different verbs slowing down the story. This might be the last time that he ever sees his son in camp. We on board so far? Yeah? The very first time Abraham gets up early in the morning, Genesis 19. So this is right after Abraham has bargained with God. So Abraham arose early in the morning. Here it is again. And he went to the place where he had stood before the Lord to bargain. And he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and he looked toward all the land of the valley, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land ascended like the smoke of a furnace. This could have been, he was worried this might be the last time he's seeing his son Lot. Abraham cared about his adopted son, cared about his son with the surrogate, Hagar, and he cared about Isaac. He cared about all of them. That was clear. Genesis 20, Abraham lies again to King Abimelech and uses the same exact lie that he used with Pharaoh. Maybe he's hoping the world leaders aren't on a group chat. He's using the same exact lie. And then Abraham, afterwards, God comes to Abimelech in a dream and tells him what's happening. And then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maid so that they bore children. Because the punishment was the rest of the women were not able to have children because Abimelech had taken Sarah. So now we see infertility, barrenness as a punishment. Genesis 20:18. For the Lord had closed fast all the wombs of the household of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Even fringe characters, even these non-named women around Abimelech, everyone is interested in trying to have children. Everybody. Even Lot's daughters, and they're willing to do whatever they need to do to try and overcome this, because infertility is painful, it's challenging, it's shaming, especially depending on your culture or your family's rules about what's supposed to happen. Not having children when you're wanting to have children is incredibly difficult. So people are willing to do extreme things to try and get around that. All right, Genesis 21. Isaac arrives, and there's this feast. Sarah is 90 years old, and Ishmael ends up, the verb is Isaacing Isaac, teasing Isaac, Isaacing Isaac, and Sarah says, "Nuh-uh, not in my house. You got to send the servant and this boy away." So they are sent off into the desert, never to be seen again. Well, by Sarah. Genesis 22, the binding of Isaac. This is the mountaintop experience when Abraham takes Isaac up to the mountaintop, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we're interested in what's happening with the family, right? And now it came about after these things, after the binding of Isaac, after the Akedah, that it was told to Abraham, saying, "Behold, Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nahor, as his firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pil." These are sweet names. If you're looking for baby names, there's a lot of good ones in here. Pildash is a nice one. Jidlaph is one of my favorite. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. Whew, there's a sweet name tucked in here. The narrator is trying to put all these names, puts a female's name in here. Let's pay attention to this. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, whose name was Remuah, also bore Tibah, Gaham, and Tahash, and Maacah. So here's what's happening with the story right now. What the narrator has just done, he's just given us the family tree. This is what's happening. And there's this person over here named Rebekah. Why would the narrator introduce Rebekah right here? Any ideas? What? He's going to be Isaac's wife, right? And the narrator is basically saying, okay, so there's this big story with Abraham, Big Daddy, taking Isaac, his promised son, up to the mountaintop, and then he comes down. Then there's this little interlude. Now, back at the ranch, there's this family tree, and there's this girl named Rebekah. Okay? Now let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. That's what the narrator's doing. Little interlude. I want you to make sure you know who Rebekah is. Let's get back to the story. And the very next thing that happens in the story, so after Abraham comes down the mountain, the very next thing that happens in the story is Sarah passes away. Okay? Let's look at this without the chapter breaks, without the verses, just look at the story. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived in Beersheba. So where's Abraham? Good. Now there's this back at the ranch with Rebekah, with the family tree. The very next line, now Sarah lived 127 years. These are the years of the life of Sarah. Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Abraham came in or went up to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. So Abraham goes to Beersheba. Where does Sarah die? Yeah. Why aren't those in the same spot? In fact, let's look at the map. Here's Beersheba. Here's Hebron. 26 and a half miles apart. Maybe you're still like, I don't know this region of the world, so I'm going to try and make it a little more, wiggle. Here's where Forest Park SDA Church. If you go all the way up here, right, I don't know these places, Oso and Hazel, is that how I say it? Do we know where this is? So Abraham's down here, this is where he lives. Sarah passed away up here. Here's Beersheba, here's Hebron. There's a lot of distance there, right? Especially if you don't have a car, right? So a couple things could be happening. One, the narrator isn't as concerned about that, and it's us just seeing this, but it's like, and Abraham lived here, back at the ranch, and Sarah died over here. Any ideas what might be happening here? Possibly. I don't know. The narrator doesn't. Yeah. So here's the hard thing, right? The one-way mirror of time, we're 4,000 years removed. We can't ask them follow-up questions, which would be really nice, right? I'd love to ask some probing questions. But there's a chance that Sarah had a difficult life. She lived in Ur, the cosmopolitan city with running water. And then she went up north. Actually, I'll do it from your point of view. Went up north, Padamaran, then back down here to Canaan, the wild, wild west. Twice she was said to be the sister of her husband. Twice she was taken, first Pharaoh, then Abimelech. She had difficulty having children. In fact, she was waiting a long time before she had Isaac, right? A long time. And then her favored son, Isaac, there's no mention in the story, I don't know if it didn't happen, but there's no mention in the story of Abraham telling Sarah, I'm going to take your favorite son up to the top of the mountain, right? She might have had a difficult life. We don't know what was happening. They probably didn't get divorced, because back then we need to be part of a community. We also know that this family could move around to find good grazing for their flocks, right? So that's another, the family moves around. They're not stuck in one spot. They're not rooted. They don't live in a city. They could pick up their tents and move. But it feels to me like the narrator saying there's some distance here, physical distance. And I wonder if this physical distance is representative of maybe some emotional distance. We feeling that? And I don't think it's too far out of the realm of possibilities for this family. Genesis 24. Abraham tells his favorite servant, you need to go find a wife for Isaac. So there's the promise, yes, I will do it. Then there's the quest, I will find this person. Oh, praise to God. And there's this person at the well, this beautiful woman who's who likes to serve, and that was really interesting to him. Then there's the message, hey, look, come back. My father, Abraham, he has a son. And then there's the moment where she makes the decision to join the servant and goes back. Oops. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. And he took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her. Thus Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. So there's a story that Isaac is grieving his mother, still grieving his mother. In fact, he's sleeping in her tent. He's missing his mom. Missing his mom, real bad. And this is the introduction. Okay, here's the new matriarch of the family, Rebekah. So now we have a new matriarch. And what is this new matriarch going to be like? It's a big question whenever there's a new person in the family, has some leadership. What are they going to do? What kind of new things are they going to infuse into the family system? Because maybe you make your eggs one way, and if you have a romantic partner, maybe they make their toast in a different way than you make it. So now we have to figure out how to navigate the way I make eggs versus the way you make eggs, the way I make toast versus the way you burn toast. We have to figure out how to work that out. Genesis 25a. Abe takes another wife, has 6 more offspring. But to the sons of his concubines, Abraham gave gifts, and he was still living, and he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward. So as these other sons, and he sends them away. Get away. I want Isaac by himself. I want him to have all this space to move around with the flock, because I know what it's like trying to share space with my adopted son Lot. I don't want Isaac to have to fight for the land with his brothers. I'm going to send his brother back. Like, here's your list, gifts. Here's your inheritance. Move out of the way so Isaac can be here, because God promised us this land, right? This land. The whole reason that Abraham first went down to Egypt and then later went to Abimelech, because there was a famine in the land. So there's already been 2 famines so far that Abraham has experienced. Isaac really only has chapter 26 to himself as the main patriarch, and even then his twins, Esau and Jacob, actually come before him chronologically in the story. We know more about Isaac and Jacob than we do about, we know more about Esau and Jacob than we do about Isaac right at the beginning. So what are some stories or things you know about Isaac? What kind of character is he like? He prefers one son over the other. That's right. Isaac likes Esau more than Jacob. What else do we know about Isaac, the person of Isaac, the character of Isaac?
Obedience.
Obedience. He was obedient. That's right. Another hand over here.
He was fairly patient in one sense because he worked a long time for his wife.
Good, fairly patient. We're talking about Jacob. Jacob was patient. Yep, Jacob was patient. But I like this framing of Isaac being patient. Oftentimes we see Isaac as passive. More stuff is done to him than he acting on the world. The world does stuff to him rather than him exerting his will. Yes?
Yeah, I was going to say peaceful or passive.
Peaceful, passive, milquetoast. Some people call him weak. He doesn't do very much. He's a person in the story, but he's not as big of a character as Abraham, right? Abraham is big in the story. And then there's Isaac, and then who's the next big character? Jacob. We got to get through Isaac to get to Jacob, right? It's hard growing up in a family when there are other big personalities or big successful individuals because you're always compared to them, right? Let's look at this. So over here is Mark Wahlberg. Here's Anthony Mackie, and here's The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. Look at those shoulders. They know the inside of a weight room. Am I right? Big individuals. If they're walking towards me on one side of the street, I'm crossing over to the other side. Thank you very much. Big individual. Look at that. But look at what happens when we put them up next to other people who are even bigger. Here's Mark Wahlberg right here. And here he is over here. Look at him. He's like 13 years old. Look at him. Right? He needs someone to strap on his helmet to ride his bike. Do you see that? Here's Shaquille O'Neal, former NBA player. Here's Charles Barkley. Look how big they look. Even The Rock looks kind of scrawny, doesn't he? Like he is twice his size. He's like, hey, can I get in this picture, guys? He looks like a little child here, is that right? But in this picture, he looks big, right? How about this? Anyone a Seahawks fan? Yeah. Who likes Russell Wilson right now? I love Russell Wilson because our draft pick is sweet. So keep doing what you're doing. Okay, so who's this? DK Metcalf. He's like 6'4", 235, pure muscle, big man, like one of the biggest, tallest men on the field. He is a big boy, right? Let's look what happens. He has this permit here. Look how small he looks. This is Dikembe Mutombo, one of the tallest, best blockers in the NBA. This guy, he's wearing a little baseball hat. They took him to a Little League game. There's a big difference between these pictures because who you're standing next to changes the way people see you. Are you on board with this? Yeah. Isaac actually does some pretty cool stuff. It's just that he's sandwiched between his father Abraham and then his son Jacob. So he looks smaller, more passive, but he does some pretty incredible things. So let's do right by Isaac, and let's just kind of showcase what he does. Maybe. Okay, so Abraham dies. These are the years of Ishmael. We know that down here, Ishmael lives in defiance of all of his relatives, so it kind of tells you a little bit about Ishmael after Abraham dies. Then there's more infertility again with Isaac is the only patriarch to pray to God about his wife's infertility. Abraham talks to God, hey, we're still infertile over here, but Isaac prays to God and God hears his prayer. Later, Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren, and the Lord heard his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. So let's notice, so far in 2 generations, experience of infertility. On board with that? Okay. But the children inside her struggled with each other, and she said, why is this happening to me? And in my mind, I'm hearing again. So Rebekah went to inquire of the Lord, and he declared to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be the stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So there's this tussle inside of her belly, inside of her womb, and if you pull out your smartphones, if you want to look at this, here's a little image of 2 babies who are fighting inside of the womb. And the word that's used here in Hebrew is like scrapping and fighting, as if they're fighting for their life inside of the belly. So she is concerned, about what's going to happen this time with these children. So let's check it back in at the genogram. Notice I have not put any relational lines on here yet. I promise I will do that at the end, but I just want to make sure we're able to track along with this. So we have, here's this generation. We know there's infertility happened here. Now infertility happened here, but luckily we have Esau and Jacob, and we know that the parents have favorite children, right? We know that Rebekah preferred Jacob, and we know that Isaac preferred Esau, right? In fact, when the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the field, so he wanted to be out and about. He wanted to be out there doing stuff, while Jacob was a quiet man who stayed at home. So Jacob wanted to stay at home in the tents. He wanted to be part of this family, and Esau wanted to be out and about. He was more adventurous, right? A free spirit. Because Jacob had a taste for wild game, he loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Uh-oh, we're setting up this little parallel. Favoritism. But this is not the only time that favoritism has showed up in this family, right? In the previous generation, there was also favoritism. Okay, let's keep going. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like as a family therapist, having these individuals in my family therapy room, and how it would work with these individuals, and I don't know. I'm not here to say how these families should change their behavior. I just wonder what it would be like, because there's clearly some conflict between Esau and Jacob. In fact, from the very beginning, Jacob was trying to get a free ride holding on to the ankle, right, of Esau. So there's this story, the famous story of Jacob seeing Esau coming in from the field and has this bowl of soup, right, this lentil stew. Remember this story? And he trades, let's make a one-for-one transaction. I'll trade you this stew if you give me the birthright. Remember the story? How is Esau painted in this picture, in this story? Anyone remember? It's painted as if Esau is more concerned about eating than anything else. Good, right. Anything else we know about Esau in this story? This particular story? What? He doesn't care, right. Who is this guy? He's more concerned about food, and he doesn't care about his birthright? We can't trust this guy Esau, right? As if he's doing the wrong thing. Back then, they did not have any Airbnbs. They did not have McDonald's, right? So people who were traveling had to rely on the hospitality of other people in the region if you were going to transition from one place to another. So hospitality towards strangers, big thing. Hospitality towards your family, that's just expected. And if Jacob is here making his lentil stew, he's not making a cup of noodles, right? He's making a pot of food. He's pulling a pan of lasagna out of the oven. So either he has just helped make food for the whole camp, and Esau is the last one to eat, so everyone else has already eaten, or other people are in the middle of eating, and he's trying to make this special transaction with Esau, or people have yet to eat, but he's charging this big price to Esau. Do you think he's going to charge the same price to everyone else in the camp? No. This is a bigger critique on Jacob than Esau. Who does this to your family? There's this big pot. Other people are going to eat, but he's saying, you can't have any unless you give me your birthright. This is who Jacob is. I think this story is more about Jacob than Esau. This very last piece here, that Jacob gave him some bread and lentil stew to Esau, who ate and drank and got up and went away. The narrator is saying, like he came in like a caveman, he ate, drank, got up and left. That's what I do. Thus, Esau despised his birthright. So the question is, the Hebrew can go both ways. Is it after this transaction, Esau despised his birthright? Or before this transaction, he despised his birthright? He's a man of the field. He wants to go hunting. If he's going to be the firstborn son, he's going to have some, the big R word, responsibility for the family. What is the birthright exactly? Let's see. So, if you have 10 sons in the family, the firstborn son gets their cut, plus another portion, then everything is equally distributed amongst the rest of the 9 sons. So if you have 9 sons in the family, the firstborn gets their piece, plus the birthright, then everyone else divides with what's left. If you have 2 sons, the firstborn gets their cut, plus the birthright, Then everything that's left goes to the second son. So what's happening here is Jacob is saying, you give me 2/3 of the inheritance, and I'll give you my 1/3 plus a bowl of stew and some bread. That's what's happening. So, and Abraham is wealthy, right? So Esau is giving up a lot. Is it worth it for the stew? Probably not. Was there some extortion? Probably. But did he care as much about needing to be in charge of the family? Maybe not. Maybe, just throwing it out there, maybe this was a good deal for Esau, because he didn't have to be the firstborn with the firstborn responsibility to have all of these things. But the big question is, what sort of family member would force this sort of transaction? Jacob would. This is who Jacob is, and we're going to see how this unfolds later on in the story. Finally, we get to Isaac. We've been waiting a long time talking about Isaac. Now here he is. We know that he can lie. He used the same exact lie that his father used when he went to King Abimelech. Oh, this Rebecca, oh, this is my sister. He used the same exact lie, but he wasn't as good at it because he got caught. He digs wells. He grows wheat 100 times better than the other people around. So this shows that Isaac is very diverse. He can live in the city. He can stay in one place. He can also be a pastoral nomad. He can do both of these things. Abraham and Jacob and Joseph were never, well, Joseph later on in Egypt, in charge of the wheat, right? But Jacob and Abraham, no mention of growing anything over here. But Isaac is very successful. He's a successful man. In fact, he's so big that King Abimelech says, hey, look, people are scared of you. Can you please go away? You are too big in this region. Like, we don't want this big bully, even though he wasn't bullying him, but just this scary big family with a lot of power and wealth. We don't want you so close to us. So he was scary to other people in the region. But again, Isaac compared to Abraham and Jacob, he looks a little bit smaller. Doesn't mean he was a small man, but just compared to who he was sandwiched with. Okay, so and then there's Jacob's deception and Isaac's hesitation. There's these questions that Isaac has. Remember, Isaac says, Esau out, can you go kill some game, come back and cook it the way that I like it, and then I'll bless you. And Rebekah hears about it and says, hey, Jacob, your brother was just sent out. How about I cook some goat for you, and we'll dress you up in a Halloween costume with some goat fur so you can smell like Esau. You wear some of Esau's clothes, and you present this food because I know exactly how Esau cooks it. I'm going to cook it in the same way for Isaac. And you go in and you pretend like you're Esau. And when he does this, we can see in the story, Isaac has a lot of questions about what's going on, right? Who are you, my son? Doesn't he know Jacob? How is it that you have come so quickly, my son? Please come close that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esau or not. So it's clear Isaac has some suspicions, right? The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. What do I do with this? Are you really my son Esau? Please come close and kiss me, my son. And when he smelled his garments, he blessed him. Major consequences for this family, right? What happened to this family after this event? I'm seeing this, distance, right, between the two siblings. In fact, this was Rebekah's idea, right? And she never saw her son again. Never saw Jacob again. And the family is split. The blessing is about God's blessing of prosperity, which includes the idea of fertility. Thus, the father's blessing is related to the chance of future progeny. So Isaac is blessing. So already Jacob has the birthright, right? He's traded that. So now he has the birthright. And now he gets the blessing as well. He gets both of the B's, the double B's. That's what he's doing. And then he has to run away from the family. So he runs away, but we know that Rebekah has a brother, Laban. So Jacob runs over here to Laban. In fact, Rebekah recommends that he goes over this direction. So here's the family tree right over here. Therapist, will threatening your brother really? That wasn't a threat, that was a promise. Sorry, he felt sorry, not sorry. Esau is hell-bent, if I can use that word, in that moment, he is wanting to kill his brother. At least that is what is happening in the narrative. So Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which his father blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob. So right here, it looks like Esau wants to kill his brother. So Jacob runs back up to Padamaran. Hey, we've been here before. In fact, this is where that person is back at the ranch, that person named where Rebecca came from. So now he's going back to the homeland of Rebecca, see what he can find. Jacob meets this tender-eyed Leah and beautiful Rachel and gets tricked to wives for the fair price of 14 years. And what happens is he sees this person, Rachel. Hey, I'll work for Rachel for 7 years. On the wedding night, Laban does the swapperoo. Oh, not Rachel, it's Leah. And then Jacob's upset. Well, okay, if you work for another 7 years, then I'll let you marry Rachel. So he ends up working 7 years, married twice, another 7 years of work. So the marriage is sandwiched between 2 7 years worth of work. So the question is for me is, how do you think Leah and Rachel got along as sister wives? Split, yeah. What was the word you said earlier, messy? Right? It continues to be messy, right? In fact, they have infertility wars, right? It's still messy. So in the next generation, there's still some more infertility in this family. So let's look at the lies that these families, the playbooks that these families are operating from. So Abraham lies to Pharaoh saying, "This is my sibling." Why? To save his own skin. And he does the same lie again to Abimelech. "Oh, this is my sibling, my sister." Why? To save my own skin. If it's good for the goose, it might be good for the gander. And Isaac lies to Abimelech. It's the same thing. "Me too. This is my sibling, Rebecca," to save his own skin. This family is not that creative when it comes to deception, though. Let's see what happens next. Jacob, prompted by Rebecca, lies to Isaac, saying, "I am my sibling," right? And here is his skin, right? Because he was a hairy man. But even over in Padamaran, they use the same playbook, which is not surprising because Rebecca and Laban came from the same family. Let's see what happens here. Leah, prompted by Laban, lies to Jacob, "Me too, I am my sibling, and here is my skin." The family is really interested in who is a sibling and who is not a sibling, and using the siblingship as a way to deceive other people to get what you want, this immediacy to get what you want, even if it means sacrificing something else in the relationship. So God blessed tender-eyed Leah. And you look at the different names of the sons of Leah, they mean different things. The first few, she is really concerned about gaining the favor of Jacob because she's not receiving that. Then finally, when Judah comes along, she says, "Okay, this time I'll praise the Lord instead of trying to gain my husband's favor, because it's clear my husband is not interested in me." So these are the names of her sons and what they mean, these different names mean. Here's the infertility wars. Now, Genesis 30. Now, in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes, and so there's the eldest son of Leah, in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But Leah said to her, "Is it a small matter for you to take my husband?" Okay, so this is the story of what's happening. Jacob is with Rachel, not with Leah. "And would you take my son's mandrakes also?" So Rachel said, "Therefore, he may lie with you tonight, one night, in return for your son's mandrakes." Does anyone know what a mandrake is? I don't know either, so no, that's not true. We go to the next slide. Okay, this is what the fruit looks like. It can flower over here, but here's what the root looks like. This looks a little vaguely anthropomorphic. Do we see that? Almost like the head here is the body, and depending on what you pull up, it could look like arms and legs. Do we see that? So mandrakes were seen to have special, I'm going to say magical, but you could say scientific or medical properties to help with infertility. You could either wear it as an amulet for good luck. You could also, it almost looked like a ginger root, right? You could also boil it in tea and take that as an aphrodisiac. So this is kind of like this is something to help with getting pregnant. This is about fertility. And you pull it from Mother Earth. So there's this deep connection here with this family. But mandrakes were actually they were deliriant, hallucinogenic, tropane alkaloids. So any psychiatrists in here to help me out? Okay. These are drugs. These are not street drugs, they're field drugs, right? So what's happening is, Rachel is saying, you give me some of those drugs, and I'll pimp out my husband for one night. That's what's happening. That's what's happening in this family. This is just something that happens in this family. This is part of the family, is how they get along. And so Leah has a difficult decision. Boy, I want to have more kids. And these mandrake could really help me. But I also need a husband. That's going to help things out too. So, rock in a hard place, I'll make this decision for one night. And she actually gets pregnant from this. There's a pastoral proverb, I was swift with my revenge, I only waited 100 years. Willing to wait. The resentment just boiling. Ooh, the vengeance just growing silently. How will Esau respond to Jacob's return? Because Jacob's been over here, got 2 wives, is now very wealthy, has some kids, has a lot of goats. Not because Laban is trying to help. In fact, Laban is trying to swindle him. But God still blessed Jacob. Genesis 31:34. Jacob runs with his family to Canaan, and when Laban hears about Jacob and his family running back to Canaan from Padamaran down to Canaan, Laban runs after him with his men, and he says, what idols are happening here? Because Laban believes that Jacob has stolen the family idols. If you remember this story, the family idols are very important. And he's coming to look for these idols. And when you look at the story, let me go back a little bit. The story, if you remember the story, Laban comes in, and he comes to Jacob and says, where are my idols? Jacob says, whoa, no idols here. You can look anywhere you want to in camp. So Jacob looks around, and he goes to the tent of Rachel, and Rachel is inside of the tent, sitting on the saddle of a camel, but the camel's not inside. She's sitting on the saddle. And so because she's sitting on the saddle, Laban tries to come in, and she says, it's my time of the month, you can't come in here. So Laban says, okay, he moves on. But she's actually sitting on those family idols. So, question. Does Jacob, the deceiver, does he know whether or not Rachel has taken the family idols? No. How do we know? What? Right, because he would not have allowed Laban to search had he known. Okay. Can you think of anyone else in the Bible that has made an outlandish statement like, far be it from me, I will never do this, that's not me, that's not true? And are any big swears that that's not actually happening, even though we know it's happening? How about the story of Peter? Jesus has been arrested. And just a few hours before, Peter has pulled out his sword to try and defend his Savior, but now he's in the court of the high priest, being questioned, falsely accused of being with that Nazarene. And Peter swears up and down that he does not know this man, right? I wonder if the same thing is happening here with Jacob. Here's why. The family idols are mentioned later on in the story, and there's no, whoa, how'd these get here? Jacob just carries on, business as usual. Let's see. Jacob is afraid of Esau's 400 men. He wrestles with God. Israel, he now has a name change, reunites with Esau. And if you read this story in Genesis 33, this has strong echoes to the prodigal son in Luke 15, if you're interested. Big things, very, very similar in with how they're interacting. And it's Esau that looks like the father in Luke. Genesis 34, there's Dinah, Leah and Jacob's daughter, who is sexually assaulted, and Levi and Simeon get revenge on the town of Shechem. They go in, and they say, okay, you can marry our sister, but you have to all be circumcised. So they all get circumcised. They go in, he kills them all. And then Jacob gets upset. And notice Jacob is named Jacob here, even though just the previous chapter, he was renamed Israel. But the narrator is saying, let's listen to what Jacob, the previous name, what he says. Jacob says to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble upon me by making me a stench to the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the people of this land. We are few in number, and if they unite against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed. So who is Jacob concerned about? His skin. Yes, we are tracking. He's concerned about his own skin. Even though his daughter was violated and he's not standing up to them. In fact, his sons are doing this sort of thing. But his sons replied, should we have treated our sister like a prostitute? This prostitute, we've seen that in the previous chapters. of the mandrakes being traded. So this is something the family talks about. The family knows what this is like. Let's go to here. So the big question now is, who is Jacob and Israel? What are they all about now? Before they were all about deception. And now what is he about? Well, it seems like he's concerned about his own skin. This is who this person is. Okay, Genesis 35. Jacob takes and buries the family idols. No surprise of finding them in his tents mentioned here. He just buries them. So I wouldn't be surprised if he knew about it. He's a trickster. I would not put it past him. I don't know. I wasn't there. But he buries the family idols, and there's no much like, Rachel, how'd you get these here? Let's just bury them here and just move on. Rachel dies. Benjamin's born at the same time. Reuben sleeps with Bilhah, which is the maidservant of Rachel. Again, Jacob does nothing. What's happening here? Reuben is sleeping with the maidservant of Rachel, the preferred wife of Jacob. After Rachel dies, Reuben is trying to establish his dominance in the family, saying, I can do this and you can't stop me. It's a big power play, because he knew that his father wouldn't stand up to other sort of indiscretions with the daughter, so why would he stand up to me if I do this and he does it and nothing happens? So question, what is Jacob interested in? Preserving his own skin. Jacob is renamed Israel again. He wrestled with God, contended with God again, and basically like, can you handle your family? I think there's a big question here. It's clear that Jacob does not do a good job, I'll say parenting. It's a big family, but he does not do a good job leading his family. His sons are going back. There's a question. The green microphone, por favor.
Okay, there we are. Actually, it's my question. I'm realizing that there's a bit of passive aggressiveness and avoidance of conflict.
Yes.
In all these things, like, okay, this major thing happens, but I don't really want to confront it. I'd rather just walk away from it. But then sometimes, if the circumstances are right, if I feel comfortable enough around the people, like my own family, I'm willing to totally lose it and, you've made me a stench to everyone and, blow up on your own family kind of thing. And that seems to repeat a bit throughout.
Thank you. We often interact with other people outside of our family different than we do towards our own family members. Sometimes our family members get the worst of us, right? And that seems to be happening. I'm glad you pointed that out, Ryan. Thank you. In fact, he's definitely more like, put my head in the sand, this will all blow over. But at the very end of his life, he ends up cursing those two sons. So he just waits and waits and waits, doesn't do anything. At the very end, on his deathbed, he curses them instead of blessing them. So he does something, but not direct, very indirect, very passive-aggressive. Then there's mention of Esau's descendants. Here we go. So here's the genogram down here. It looks a little bit wider because now we have Isaac and Rebekah. So here's Esau and 3 wives. And then here's Jacob with Leah and Zilpah over here, Rachel and Bilhah over here. Here's the son. So this genogram is really filling out. Now we have lots of lots of arrows in the quiver. Joseph is different from his brothers in several ways. One, we knew his brothers did not like him, right? And we know that when they saw how their father loved Joseph, the preferred son, they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. So, a mess during Thanksgiving, right? A mess. The favorite son, the rest of the sons cannot stand him at all. Cannot speak to him on friendly terms. He's a tattletale. He told on his brothers. He snitched on his brothers. He brought back a bad report to his father. Clearly, he's Israel's favorite. Jacob loved Joseph down here. Firstborn from Israel's favorite wife, right? He is gifted a coat of many colors, or a royal coat, so he looks different, he's treated different. Biologically, he's from the favored wife, not from our mother Leah. He's not assigned the same labor responsibilities. In fact, in the story, when he goes up to try and find them and they put him into a pit, they're all working. He's chilling at home in the tents. Very different division of labor. He dreams about his family and his brothers bowing down to him, and then he shares that dream twice. Joseph is setting himself apart, and Jacob/Israel is also setting him apart. This is causing a lot of conflict in the family, right? Even though later on in the story, we know that they meant it for evil and God turned around for good, but in just the family, there's a lot of drama here, right? Another generation with favoritism. So 3 generations with favoritism, 3 generations with infertility. So far, 2 generations with famine, but we know that a famine is coming down here, right? Right. Okay. So the sons could have chosen a lot of different approaches. They could have told Joseph to stop saying he's better than us. They could have said maybe we can just steal his coat and that's it. They could have said maybe tell their father that maybe the favoritism toward Joseph is hurtful. But instead, they jump all the way to sell Joseph into slavery. In fact, they kill an animal and they put the blood on his coat to make it look like he was torn to shreds, right? In this family, this is not the first time that an animal has been killed for deception, right? It happened in the previous generation to deceive Isaac as well. Judah and Tamar, a little interlude, that story. Joseph prospers in Egypt, then is imprisoned. He's a dreamer. He interprets that. Joseph becomes the viceroy, the second in command of Egypt, and he stores a whole bunch of food. And then there's a famine. Whew, this is near the end of the story. Stay with me. Joseph seems to have this prescient knowledge of the brothers because there's a famine in the land. Israel sends the brothers down to Egypt to get some food. So everyone is experiencing difficulty in the land. The food is not producing. They're experiencing the pain of that. They come down. Joseph sees them. He imprisons them, and he has this prescient knowledge about, now tell me more about this youngest son that you have, this younger brother that you didn't bring with you. And how's your father? It's almost like he knows the family. They obviously don't know that this is Joseph, but Joseph knows what's going on in the family. He imprisons them, and then he keeps Simeon hostage and says, you can go back to your father, but if you want Simeon, next time you come to visit, and I know there's going to be a next time, so I dreamed about it, you better bring that youngest son, Benjamin. So he sent the money back in the sacks, and they eventually run out of food again. So what happens is they go home, and instead of just the food, Joseph puts the money that the brothers had paid for the food back in the sacks. They go back home with all the money they left with and the food. But then they run out of food again. The pain of the land is still present. And they talk with their father about, look, we can't go back down there unless we bring this Benjamin, this youngest son. So Jacob is in this difficult spot. The pain of not having enough food because of the land, or the pain of maybe losing my other favorite son. Which pain do I choose? Eventually, he sends Benjamin down. Brothers come back with Benjamin, and Joseph seats them by birth order. In fact, they come and eat at his house. He does not eat at the same table as them. He's up on a different table. But he seats them in birth order and gives Benjamin 5 times as much food as the rest of them. And they are just flummoxed, bamboozled. They cannot understand how this is happening. How does he know this? There must be some special divination at play. In fact, we'll see this divination coming up soon. Because Joseph sends them away with their food, but he puts the cup used for divination in Benjamin's sack. So as they're heading back home, Joseph says, hey, servant, go run after my brothers, stop them, and say whoever took the divination cup has to come back. So they go, servants come, say, whoa, hold the phone, hold the horses. We need to check someone stole the cup. We think it might be you. Oh, nobody stole it. It's not. As you can check in all of our bags. Opens up all the bags, and lo and behold, gets to Benjamin's bag. Open it up. There's a divination cup. And what do the brothers do? Anyone remember? They tear their clothes. We have been waiting chapters for them to tear their clothes. They will tear Joseph's clothes. When they bring that bloodied coat to Jacob, Jacob tears his clothes, but nobody else is tearing their clothes. And finally, the idea of Benjamin going back down to Egypt, away from the father, they tear their clothes. Why is Joseph doing all this? Why is he doing this big old rigmarole? Go for it. Yeah, anyone want to chime in? Up here.
He wanted to test their character.
Yes, but what do you mean by, okay, I like this. Test their character, what do you mean?
He wanted to know if they had changed.
Who's they?
His brothers.
And the brothers are part of the family. Every behavior is a symptom of the system. He is testing the family right now. What better story to get rid of Benjamin, the new favored brother, from the favored wife that passed away, than to say, we went down to Egypt, Pops? I'm sorry, there's nothing we could do. Benjamin must have stolen this cup. It was in his sack. And the viceroy of Egypt wanted to take him back. There's nothing we could do. So you lost your other son also. Sorry about that. They could have easily said a sweet, sweet cover story. Instead, they protest that. No, we're not going to lose this son. A very different response compared to Joseph, right? Something has shifted from when they got rid of Joseph to where they're trying to protect Benjamin. Joseph is testing the family. So every behavior is a symptom of the system. Testing their character. Are they doing things differently now? Or is it the same old family? Yes, there's a hand here.
So Joseph is far away from the family, but
Yep.
he's also deceiving the family right here.
Oh, this is part of the story,
So
right?
it's still, the trick is still in the family.
Yeah, the deceit is still there, right? Right? Even pure Joseph is not above a little deception, right? Yeah, good. I'm glad you pointed that out. So we're close to the end of the story, and we're going to be able to see all this stuff on the genogram at once. Good. Okay, so what are some of Abraham's family rules? What are some of the intergenerational patterns of behavior in this family? How do people handle anxiety and tension? Who are the villains, or the bad guys? And who are the heroes? Here's the family tree. I simplified it. I'm going to put all the sons here. I'm going to kind of capture all this. We have 1 generation, 2 generation, 3 generation, 4 generation. Here we go. These are the individuals who are defiant. Hagar is defiant. Ishmael is defiant. Esau is defiant. These sons are defiant. So defiance in every generation. Okay. Here are the folks who lie. Abram, Sarai, Isaac, Rebekah, Laban, Jacob, Rachel, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, all y'all down here, they lie. So look at the liars versus those who are defiant but not lying. Yes?
Shouldn't Leah also be a liar? On our wedding night?
Yes, she should. You're right. Whoever made these slides, I'll have a conversation with them. Yes. Leah, don't want to leave Leah out. That's right. Leah should also be a liar. Appreciate that. Thank you. Email me. I'll make sure to put that in here. Thank you. Here's conflict in the family. Look at the conflict within a generation, within partners, right? Conflict between Hagar and Sarai, Isaac and Rebekah, tension here. So between romantic partners, there's tension, as well as intergenerational tension, right? Conflict. And I'll say unresolved conflict. So defiance, lying, conflict. Sounds like a great family so far. Favoritism for younger offspring. Towards the youngest offspring. Severe favoritism in every single generation. Nothing new under the sun. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. This family seems like a real family to me. They're using this, they're burning their toast and they're overcooking their eggs. That's what they're doing. Extreme manipulation. Whew. A lot of manipulation here. A lot of upsetness. They're just all over the place. Cutoff. There are some cutoffs from the family, or people are kicked out or they run away. So Hagar runs away. She comes back. Then she's also kicked out with Ishmael. So kicked out of the family. That's the first big one, right? And just because someone passes away or leaves the family, does that mean the anxiety disappears? No, it stays present. In fact, we can see in the next generation, Jacob runs away from Esau, right? And then runs back because he runs away from Laban, so he's just running around. He's running from this place to the next place. And then Joseph is sent away, sold to Ishmaelites, extended family members, basically, traveling down to Egypt. So this is one way the family resolves conflict. Let's cut you off. Let's get rid of you. In every generation, this happens. Right? This is one way that this family chooses to resolve conflict, by getting rid of the person. But by getting rid of someone, does that make the anxiety disappear? No. Kicking someone out does not mean that resolves the tension in the family. It just becomes latent or redistributed amongst the rest of the family members. Question, was Abram running from something? I don't know. But I know he was running from infertility. And God put this out there. Look, I will help you with family and land. Come follow me. So he was in pursuit of something because he did not have everything that he wanted at that point in time. There's this unrepaired rift between Ishmael and Isaac. And this rift between these two brothers, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael, has the tension between these two families ever been resolved? Can we experience some of the butterfly effects from 4,000 years ago, even today? So just because you kick someone out of the family does not mean that tension disappears. In fact, in some ways, our political world is often divided amongst these two lines. So the tension and stress that we experience today, it's old. It's not new. A lot of the stuff we deal with on a daily basis didn't just spring into being right now. It's old stuff that's been passed down from generation to generation, like a precious family heirloom. Not just the anxiety, but the behavior patterns that keep it caught and stuck in the family systems. Because it's often not resolved. It's just passed down to the next generation. And then this is the way we do things. We just burn our toast here. Be quiet. We burn our eggs. Don't worry about it. And that's just how we do things. So, who are the villains? Who are the heroes? Let's try and point them out. Help me out. Tell me who's a villain and who's a hero in the family. Let's get you with a roving mic. Help me out. I want some clear, concrete answers. Who's a villain, who's a hero? Come on, we know these stories.
I said, which day?
Which day? Yeah, which day? Yeah. And from whose perspective? Whose genogram is it? Right? Is it Joseph's genogram? Or is it like the brother's genogram, what's happening? The perspective really matters. So what this means is, even if you grew up in a family with a sibling, you and your sibling grew up in different families because we experienced that family differently. So, traditionally, who is a hero in this family? Joseph, good, he's a hero. Traditionally, who might be another hero? Jacob. Traditionally, who's another hero? Oh, this is good. This is good. But when you look at this family, how heroic do they look? Okay. Who's a villain in the family? Let's get the roving mic so we can hear the names.
Hagar.
Hagar is a villain. Oh, yeah. She started looking down on Sarah after she got pregnant. Good. Who's another villain?
Ishmael.
Ishmael was a villain. Good. Notice, so far, we have two villains that have some defiance here, right? Who else is traditionally a villain?
Esau.
Esau. Good. Look, so far, these three individuals are defiant, but they are seen as the villains, even though they are not the ones who are lying. Really? Whoever has the power can shape the narrative about who's bad and who's not. Good. Who else is a villain? There's lots of, no microphone.
Jacob.
Why is Jacob a villain? He's a good guy. He wrestled with God. God changed his name. Laban. Okay, who in this family might see Jacob as a villain? There's hands.
I
Someone talk. Someone help me out.
was going to say he is a villain because he deceives and lies to his brother, and then he also kind of deceives Laban a bit, and yeah, he lies, does all kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
So,
And then he doesn't stick up for his offspring.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, is he here? I don't know. Is Laban a villain? Okay, Laban's a villain. Laban's a villain. How about these sons? Are these sons who sell Joseph often seen as villains? Yeah? Now picture this. You come from a long line, families that are really good at deception. Really good. Really good at lying. Really good at killing animals for your deception. Aren't they just really doing everything in the family playbook? They're just rolling it all in one big family magnum opus in Abraham's family mafia. They're just doing everything that has come before then. They're repeating that. So how come they are the villains? They're just doing what they were taught. This is what they know. This is what I do to resolve conflict. I lie. I deceive. I kick people out. I remove people from the equation. So in some ways, they're being really good family members, right? They're following the family rules about what we do to resolve conflict. So they are right in line with everyone else in the family. Good. So everybody's a villain. Good. Who's responsible? Are they responsible for their actions? Ooh, I saw a lot of this. Every behavior is a symptom of the system. They are following the system rules. So in one sense, they're good, they're loyal to the system rules family members. In another sense, you look at what they're doing. Wow, how could you do that to your brother? But within the family, these are accepted rules, and everybody's doing it, not just them. It wasn't like they came up with this idea. I'm sure they heard stories about the other stuff that happened, so they are just right in line. This is just the next chapter. There's always conflict in the marital unit within this family. The younger son receives the blessing in this family. There's always conflict between the siblings in this family. And the biggest rule seems to be do whatever is expedient right now. Save your skin. That's a family rule. And everybody's doing it. So, whatever we refuse to acknowledge, we will undoubtedly and unconsciously pass on to others. If we don't know we're doing it, we're just going to keep on doing it. But if we can increase insight into our behavior, every behavior is a symptom of the system, we also come from families that may or may not look like this family. If you're like me, in your family, you have some dysfunction. It's been passed down from generation to generation. And if you don't know what that dysfunction is, you will continue to dance with those same dance steps. But if you can identify the patterns, there's a chance to make some changes. Let's look at life satisfaction for these patriarchs. Life satisfaction. Genesis 25:7. These are all the years of Abraham's life that he lived, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died a good old age, an old man satisfied with life. And he was gathered to his people. Let's look at Isaac. Now, the days of Isaac were 180, 5 years longer. Then Isaac breathed his last, notice this is the same kind of formula, and was gathered to his people, an old man of ripe age, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. What's different between these two? It does not say he's satisfied with life. Okay? Let's look at the next generation. Jacob's talking with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is asking him about his experience. And he says, the years of my living abroad are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, nor have they attained the years that my fathers lived during the days of their living abroad. What's the difference here? This word unpleasant. Different than satisfied, right? When we have unresolved tension in our family and we pass that down to the next generation, there's a cumulative effect. So not only do they receive this precious family heirloom from before, but now they have their own life as well. And what happens if we don't resolve the tension and the conflict? We just shovel it down to the next generation. And that's what's happening here. We see it in the family. The family rules haven't changed. The patterns just continue, but the life satisfaction definitely changes. Too many people spend their lives being dutiful descendants instead of being good ancestors. The responsibility of each generation is not to please the predecessors, it's to improve things for their offspring. It's more important to make your children proud than your parents proud, which means it's important that you make changes, and you can make changes anytime. Genesis 48, near the very end, there's a swapping of hands that happens, if you remember the story. When it was told to Jacob, behold, your son Joseph has come to you, Israel collected his strength, and he sat up in bed, so he was on his deathbed. Then Jacob says to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz. He's recounting what happened. In the land of Canaan, which God had promised to that family, and blessed me. And he said to me, behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous, and I will make you a multitude of peoples. Notice how he's mentioning the land, right? And the family again. You hear that? And will give this land, we're coming back to it, it's land, people, land. And after you, give land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. So he's saying, God had this promise about the land and the people. And then he has this interesting interlude. Now your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are mine. Your 2 sons who were born to you in Egypt before I came down here, those are mine. I am adopting those 2 sons as if they were my own. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, as Reuben and Simeon are. So these 2 sons, they're mine. They're part of my group right now. They are my sons. I'm taking them. But your children that you have fathered after them shall be yours. They shall be called by the names of their brothers and their inheritance. Now as for me, when I came from Paddan, Rachel died to my sorrow in the land of Canaan on the journey, when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath. I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. So this person that I cared for, I buried her in the land. Why is he bringing this up here? This is an interesting structure. God blessed me with land and descendants, land and family. I'm taking your 2 sons as mine. Let me tell you a little bit about Rachel. He's remembering Rachel. Now, if you remember the infertility wards between Leah and Rachel, Leah had a lot more children, right? And he thought that he lost Joseph, right? One of Rachel's sons. I'm wondering if he's saying, I'm going to adopt these 2 as my sons, and they came from you, therefore they came from Rachel. These are 2 more sons for Rachel, because she had more difficulty with infertility. I wonder if he's reaching back and saying, these 2 sons belong to Rachel. They are mine. He's still thinking about the infertility. Now the eyes of Israel were so dim that from age that he could not see. And Joseph brought Ephraim and Manasseh close to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I have never expected to see your face. And behold, God has let me see your children as well. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim on his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh on his left hand toward Israel's right. The narrator is making very clear what's happening, setting the stage, what's about to happen. And he brought them close to him. But Israel reached out his right hand, placed it on the head of Ephraim, who is younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his hands, although Manasseh was the firstborn. This is what's happening, right? And Joseph saw what was happening, and it displeased him. He did not like this. So he grasped his father's hand to move it, to uncross it. Put the hand on the right son. You're doing it wrong. And Joseph said to his father, not so, my father, for this is the first one. You're confused. Place your right hand on his head. Let me help you out. But Israel says, I know, my son, I know. He will also become a people, and he will also be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. Imagine this right here. Imagine this taking place in the previous generation. Imagine Isaac telling Esau to go out to bring some of his favorite game, cook it the way he likes it, come back so I can bless you. And when he comes in, he says, and bring Jacob in as well. So Esau and Jacob are in front of Isaac. And Isaac swaps his hands, and Esau says, whoa, Dad, this displeases me. You're doing it wrong. And he says, I know, you'll be a great people too. but your younger brother shall be greater than you. If he would have been able to do that, if Isaac would have been able to do that, do you think this family would have been split and Jacob would have to run to Paddan Aram? God had already promised Rebekah and Isaac that the younger brother would be the one in charge and the older would serve there. We already knew that, right? But because of all the family shenanigans, the family was split up. This would have been a sweet solution. Would Esau have protested? Absolutely. But this could have been an elegant solution, and the family could have stayed intact and together. I'm wondering if this is what Isaac is thinking about. All of these years, few and unpleasant have been the years of my life. Looking back, this is where that all took place, at this moment of the blessing. Instead, he had to dress up like his brother, deceive his father, and then run away for his life. Yes?
Kind of like he rights the wrong.
He tries to right.
At that moment.
Yes, at this moment he's righting the wrong.
Thing that could have changed the course.
Correct. He's redoing what could have been done previously. Okay, I promise you some theological reflections, and we'll get there, and then I want to have the mic roam around to help you share with everyone else, what are some things that I missed? Because I know I missed things. What are some patterns that you noticed in the story so we can all be blessed by that? So, here's the first one. God chose to make and remake his covenant with this imperfect family. God knew what he was getting himself into with this family, and he was not scared off by that. 2, people in this family seem to work really, really hard, even take advantage of each other, to obtain or protect God's already promised blessing. Yet sometimes they also seem to put that promise in jeopardy. They are running around, even though God had promised them this land. God works even harder to not let our family dysfunction ruin his covenant with us. It's righteousness by faith for a reason. 4th, there's a contrast between God's fierce covenant loyalty. He will not give up on the covenant with us. He's not going to give up on his end. He will not do that. But that's in extreme contrast to Abraham's family loyalty, where we are willing to kick people out of the family. There's a contrast between the divine and the human, the hesed and the willingness to do whatever is expedient in the family. Sometimes the actions of one person can change the family tree. Joseph was able to have some distance from his family. Now, hear what I'm saying, what I'm not saying. Sometimes we need space from a toxic environment. Sometimes we need that. But just running away isn't a solution. Getting some distance to work on yourself, that could be a solution. But just running away doesn't solve the problem. Yes, I get physical distance or emotional distance, but that anxiety is still there. But we know that Joseph chose a very different path compared to his family. And then he tests his family. Have you changed at all in the last few years? Okay, you've changed. At least enough. One person in the family is all it takes to have a ripple effect on the rest of the family. You have quite a bit of power in your family. You start doing things differently. Other family members might protest that change. But if you start to do this, you can embody a different way of being. And you can start to infuse some new things in your family. Often we are not getting out of dysfunctional emotional or behavior patterns until we get clear of the toxic systems. The families, organizations, churches, relationships in which we are enmeshed. It's hard to heal when the relational oxygen we're breathing every day is polluted. Sometimes we need space from a toxic environment. Jeremiah 31:29. In those days they will not say again, the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. So what stuff did you notice in Abraham's family that I missed? How might we change the way you see Abraham's family from this interaction we've had tonight? And how might this change the way you see your family or your romantic relationships?
I just have a question about the adoption of Lot. So why did Abraham say to God that Eliezer was his heir if his son was Lot?
Right. So he was still looking for a biological son, the infertility piece, right? was important to have someone to pass on your own lineage. But it's also very clear that he had a special place in his heart for Lot. He adopted Lot into the family.
Not really adopted, but just a very close relationship.
Yeah, he took him under his wing. He traveled him Lot traveled with him wherever he went. He was interested in preserving Lot's life. And then he gave Lot a choice. Where do you want to go? You get to choose first. So it's clear that Lot, this nephew, has come in as part of the family.
But why wouldn't he then give his inheritance to Lot
Good
rather
question.
than his servant?
That's a great question. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. That's a great question. What I do know is he's still concerned about having his own child. He's still interested in that. Even though he loves the adopted son, he can still want a biological son. He can have both. Good. Other questions or comments? What did you notice in the story, in the family?
Do you think Joseph changed from the behavior of his family?
I don't know. He's not.
I mean, he lied to them.
He lied to them?
You know, he deceived them. So, I mean, he's still keeping the same behavior. He's just in a different location.
Yes, but he also tried to make sure that they would have the best place to live in Goshen, right? When they came down, he tried to give them a good place to live in Goshen. He didn't say, "See, you're coming to bow down to me, as I said you would," right? He's not making a big deal of that. In fact, he seems like he's trying to take care of his brothers. And he could have had a very different response. Like, "See, I told you it would happen," but we don't hear that in the narrative.
It could be, and related to that Joseph's use of those same family patterns, the deception, is to a different end than has been typical up to that point. You know, he's not just doing it to save his own skin.
His own skin, like the previous generations.
He's doing it for, testing or for the preservation of the family, saving their skin with what he's doing.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to tuck that away.
That's fine. It's yours. You can have it.
Okay, great.
So on with Jacob with Rachel and Leah, where Rachel was the favored wife, that's all
Clearly.
Jacob wanted, and he was slammed into that. I mean, that was a bad way trying to make a good thing out, lemonade out of lemons, I guess.
But it seemed like he wasn't even trying to make any attempts in the other direction.
True.
Until later on. Stay tuned tomorrow. We'll talk about that relationship a little bit more. Good. What else did you notice in the story?
I guess as far as Joseph in his position with his brothers, for some reason, him testing his brothers, I don't perceive it as deceiving them. Opinion.
Okay. Tell me more.
I was done. I was just saying that I don't perceive that as really an outright deception of trying to see if his brothers had changed.
How do you feel about him putting the divination cup in the bag and trapping them?
Or putting their money back in.
Or putting the money back in. So now they're afraid to go back. And they come back, "Oh, here's the money you gave us last time. We tried to give it to you, but it came out in sacks."
When his brothers actually came and he revealed himself to them. That's what I was saying.
He eventually revealed himself, but at first, he did not reveal himself, right? He was trying to deceive them, pretend like he was a different person, not his brothers. Not their long-lost brother. Yeah.
So, looking in the diagram you have of the family in there, I didn't see that, because I didn't see that you had Abraham being manipulative, and he manipulated Sarah twice.
Yep.
And something I remember from Bible class in academy is Abraham did the "if you love me," and whenever
you'll do this for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And usually when in our sinful.
You're right. I should have the manipulation here.
Yep.
You're right. I missed that. I mean, whoever made the slides, I'll have a conversation with them.
But
yeah,
when
absolutely
being sinful humans, oftentimes when we say, "If you love me, you will do thus and such," it's usually not a good thing.
Holding the relationship hostage, right?
Whereas God says, when He says, "If you love me," He has nothing but our best interests at heart.
In fact, in the story, if you remember the story when God, I think it's in Genesis 15, when God comes down to Abraham and tells Abraham to cut the animals in the line, cut the animals in half, and there's a smoking pot that goes through the middle of that. Remember that? So this is actually mirroring, Ryan, help, the suzerain king, the suzerain king covenant. So what happens is, so what happens is there's a king that comes in and he takes over the land and he finds like the mayor or the chieftain of the town and says, look, we're going to make a covenant together, okay? We're going to cut these animals and you're going to pass through this. And if you break our covenant that we're making, you're going to be cut in half like these animals. But instead, God comes down to Abraham and says, cut these animals. I'm going to pass through this. If you break this covenant, I will be the person to pay the price. Very different sort of response compared to this family. If you do something wrong, you're kicked out. Yes? Is there a half hand here, a full hand?
Yes, a half hand.
Okay.
Yes. I think I might be jumping a little bit ahead, but what this makes me think about is my church family.
Okay.
Because
You're not jumping too far ahead. We're going that direction.
I've seen these behaviors in church family where people are kicked out and where there's abuse and where there's manipulation. And I was reluctant to even say that, but I've seen it.
Oh, and I'm guessing most of us have seen that, right? Because this is also a church family. And what happens in our families happens in our family. We pull the same dance steps we learn in our family of origin to this same family. If this family was in our church family, we'd be seeing the same behaviors.
Yeah. Now, encouragingly, I have seen where a church member, family member, will stop that pattern. And that's glorious to see.
Yes.
And it's only the power of God that makes that happen.
Yes. And tonight we were focused on the dysfunction of the family. There are lots of amazing stories of faith and resilience and bravery also in this family. But I just wanted to point out that this family is not a perfect family. And our families are not perfect. And our churches are not perfect. But we don't have to continue the same patterns. Every behavior is a symptom of the system. Yes?
I noticed that Joseph got some distance from the family. And he set about to make some things right and improve the situation. I could apply to the church family as well.
Sometimes we might need some distance from a toxic environment. It's a possibility. But just because there's tension does not mean, oh, this person needs to leave, then we'll be okay. Right? Getting rid of someone does not necessarily resolve the tension. In fact, the anxiety is still probably going to be there. It's just latent. Good. How might this change the way you see Abraham's family? Or maybe it hasn't changed your view of them at all.
You made the mess clear.
I've made the mess clear. Okay. Okay. Well then, success. Yeah. Trying to highlight the mess.
Perhaps we messed up the view.
Okay. I'm not trying to mess up the family.
No. All I'm saying is if someone had a rosy view of it, we've sufficiently messed it up here probably tonight.
You feel closer to the family now. I can resonate with you more. Yeah. I know that. I've done that before. I've experienced that. Yeah. It will take every triggered nerve, every tremble in your voice, every butterfly in your belly, and every rejoicing ancestor for you to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. Just because you're part of a pattern doesn't mean you need to continue that pattern. You can make your own choice. Every behavior is a symptom of the system. Once you recognize that, you can choose different behaviors that reflect different values, different family values. All human behavior makes sense and put in a context. Even the most destructive and self-sabotaging behavior serves a purpose for the family. Getting rid of someone seemed like an expedient idea. It served an immediate purpose. Sometimes our short-term coping mechanisms, we're not thinking about long-term consequences. We're just thinking about immediacy. May we heal our own wounds so that our children have a clear canvas upon which to paint their own life. I'm not destined to repeat the patterns of my own childhood. We can be cycle breakers. And tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about relational triangles. When we get how anxiety is passed among different people in a triangulation, when there's 3 different people. Then we'll have a sermon, and then we'll finish up triangles part 2 at 2 o'clock, not 2:30. Awesome. Will you close out with prayer?
Absolutely. And just a little teaser, the triangles presentation is what I heard. And so if you've enjoyed what you heard tonight, this was all, well, not completely new, but your perspective on it was very much new. So I would encourage you to come back tomorrow morning. Let's pray. Gracious Lord, it's encouraging to know that you work with imperfect people like us. I think we've seen quite sufficiently here tonight that Abraham and his family were quite dysfunctional. And if we're honest with ourselves and look at our families, we can find those patterns of dysfunction in our own lives. So Lord, we are encouraged that you love us and that you've chosen us anyway. And if you could choose Abraham, you also will choose us. Just as you walked through between the animals, saying that you would allow yourself to die if we broke that covenant. We give you praise for Jesus. Lord, help us to see the things that are going wrong, and also help us to see how to choose to be better. Help us to see the choices we can make and the changes that we can effect. We ask this in Jesus' name tonight. Amen.
Amen. Be here right at 9:30 because we don't have a lot of leeway because there's something coming at 11. So, cool. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.